Jesus in My Life, Episode 7.
So let's just say that as I was raging in the flesh, let's call it that, I always knew in the back of my head or whatever, there's a voice saying, Kevin, it's not always going to be like this. You just need to go through this.
Welcome to Jesus in My Life, a podcast with Rob and Jack, where we interview everyday people like me and you about their extraordinary experiences with our Savior, Jesus Christ.
So I'm Rob, and this is Jack.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, and we're really excited about today's podcast. I have a friend here in studio with us. This is Kevin. Kevin, welcome to Jesus in My Life podcast, and we're glad to have you share your story. Why don't you first introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Krieger. I'm happy to be here today, and I'm thankful for the opportunity, that you're giving me, to share my story. Hopefully, it can help somebody, and I'm excited to share it.
All right. Well, Kevin, this is the first time meeting you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
Okay, sure. I was born and raised in Western Pennsylvania. I was raised in a very, very traditional Catholic family. I was an altar boy, went to church every Sunday.
All right.
It was really, really traditional. And so I went to Catholic school. So when I was 18, I moved to the West Coast. And so
Culture shock.
that was a major, I kind of had an idea, but yes, still a culture shock for sure. So I ended up staying here for the next 39 years, and I was saved in California, but that was on a phone conversation with my oldest brother who was in Montana at the time.
Wow.
But so I ended up being out here in California for 39 years, but I am currently back in Western PA taking care of my mother-in-law.
Okay.
So
That's awesome.
That's pretty much
That's awesome.
in a nutshell
Okay.
what happened.
Well, Kev, I've heard a little bit of your story, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more specifics and details and how this will encourage our listeners. Why don't you share? You mentioned that when you moved out to California and got a hold of your heart, tell us some of the kind of the life before Christ, and then share that experience of how God got a hold of your life.
Sure. So when I first came to California, I moved to Huntington Beach.
Nice.
The land of surf, sun, and fun, right? So I was in Huntington Beach, and I was living the life, So there was a house that was next to our house. It was occupied by 3 other single men, and we had 3 single men. So we decided to tear the fence down in the backyard and make it one big party house.
Wow.
And
Animal house.
Yeah. So, going to the beach, picking up girls, living that lifestyle, pursuing that. And then
What's the time frame of this?
this is 83.
Oh, okay.
83, 84, 85.
All right.
And so, just getting started in those fabulous 80s.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was in Huntington Beach for about 3 years. And then I moved up to the South Bay, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach area. And I started to go to a lot of seedy places because, guys, at that age, have a tendency to go to seedy places. And so I got involved with some girls. It was, I guess you can say, not quite the lifestyle of a rock star, but, you've heard the saying, sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
Well, that was my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so I was hanging out up in Hollywood and, going to all those clubs, and I was trying to fulfill. At the time, I didn't realize it. I just thought, growing up, that's everything that a guy was like, oh, yeah, hot babes, money, and good times, and that's what it was. So I was doing that, and all the while, I had people praying for me, which I didn't know, right? So anyways, back in Huntington Beach, I kind of jumped ahead, but when we were in Huntington Beach, I was talking with my oldest brother on the phone, and
It's okay.
Take your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it's just really powerful. So anyways, we're on the phone, and he led me through the sinner's prayer. But what was crazy after that, after I said the sinner's prayer, now everybody's experience is different, right? Some people thunder, lightning, or what have you. Okay. But my experience that day, I was alone. There was nobody home. There was nobody in the houses or anything like that. And I know this is going to sound kind of sci-fi-ish, but I have to explain it this way. It was like there was a calm and a peace around me. Again, it was just calm and peaceful. However, the way I was seeing the world that day, all my interaction with individuals, and I was taking walks and all that was, I'm going to reference the Matrix. So like, when you do the blue pill, red pill thing in there, and Neo, he touches the mirror. Well, it was like there was this bubble around me, and I was seeing the world through a different filter, a different lens, and it was pretty wild, actually. So, anyways, I was alone almost the whole day, which was very odd to begin with, right? There was nobody else around, and I went to a restaurant, and and I was taking walks, but it was like the reality of the world. It was being revealed to me, but yet I was like in this bubble, like this filter, and I was viewing it through that filter, and I wasn't trying to look for that. That's just what came over me. Yeah. And
it's like God lifted the veil over your eyes kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I would say that. And now here is I don't know what you want to call this part. So after that day, the next day comes. And so, I'm not a member of a church. I don't have no fellowship in my life. So anyways, let me back up to a point prior to that when I was a kid. I've always had some type of faith in my life. Of course, it's the Catholic faith. And I would just like to say that one thing about the structure that provided was exactly that. Structure provided security. Yeah. A sense of security, and like I said, I was an altar boy, I did the sacraments, Holy Communion, confirmation, and all that. But I always found it odd that every Lent, you'd go to confession and the priest, again, this isn't any type of, I'm not knocking anything, but I always felt kind of weird that, you go in and you tell your, deepest, darkest, sins or thoughts or actions. And as a little kid, I do remember me and my buddies would say, I told him about those Playboys we were looking at, right?
Right.
Stuff like that. Or, or like I swore this many times on last week and all that. So anyways, he'd say, okay, say 3 Hail Marys and 10 Our Fathers. And so you go out and but I always found it weird because it's like, okay, if you're bad and if you do this, then you're good, right? Right. You always felt like, so anyways, there was always these steps that you can do to make things right. Yeah. Right. And then you'd start the cycle over, sin, then pray, and good. Right. We're all good. Right. Right. So anyways, rinse and repeat. And,
that just never fully satified you is what you're going to, right?
Yeah, because I always felt like it just didn't seem right. Yeah. There was something off about it. Yeah. But then again, like I said, that it did provide structure. Yeah. So, and I did develop a sense of right and wrong, and that, if you did do something wrong, you felt that conviction, but also, there was penance. Yeah. Yes. Basically later. So anyways, moving forward back to that, present time, I guess you could say at that time, was that now this is going to sound crazy because you're like, okay, you were just saved and you had these filters on, and you had this marvelous experience. And, without a doubt, for me, it was a God experience. And that's the only way I can describe it. But there again, it wasn't like thunder and lightning or, elevating off the ground or anything like that. Right. It was just a presence.
Yes.
That day. So this next part, the next 3.5 to 4 years, I hope what I want people to understand is the importance of fellowship and how important that is. So anyways, the next 3.5 to 4 years is when I really was trying to fulfill the flesh. I mean, it was raging, right? I'm talking parties like you would not believe. And
so this is post the sinner's prayer.
Yes, this is post. And I know this sounds wild, or crazy or whatever. It just isn't what you would think.
Yep.
But, there again, I was young, and I was into that lifestyle, and, it didn't happen the next day, but it slowly continued, right? And even though I knew, so let's just say that as I was raging in the flesh, let's call it that, I always knew in the back of my head or whatever, there's a voice saying, Kevin, it's not always going to be like this. You just need to go through this. And I was like, so I mean, even when I was tripping or doing whatever, I don't want to say I felt comfortable, but I knew there was going to be an end to this. I just, I just knew that this wasn't going to continue.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, you were raging at this point in time. Did the partying lifestyle bring you as much satisfaction as it had it prior, or did you need to take it to the next level because it just wasn't meeting what you wanted it to meet?
Yeah, well, let's say the satisfaction in the flesh, yes.
Okay.
The spiritual satisfaction, no. Okay. So there was no satisfaction spiritually because I knew it's almost like I had to get it out of my system, type of thing. Right. But there's that voice in my head that just said, this will not last, right? You're not going to be like this.
So I have a question, and it's something that a pastor once said to me.
I know it's crazy, huh?
Well, it is, but I'm curious. Is he said once you come to Christ, when you're not walking with Him, you have too much of Him to enjoy the world, and too much of the world to enjoy Him. Would that all typify those 3 years in your life, or was it different for you?
Well, for me, the flesh was feeling good, okay, but mentally and spiritually, I knew that this wasn't it. You know, it was a conviction type of thing, but yet it was just a calming voice that said, "This too will pass. This is not going to be your dominant desires in life." You know, and so I did step away, from those friends that I had, and I took some time away, because I knew I needed to change my environment.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: if I would have gotten into a church and had gotten into a fellowship, I don't know completely if I would have. Maybe I would have only done 20% or gone through 20% of that. But I think I went through that maybe for my testimony.
Yeah.
So after that, I ended up getting into a fellowship. I found a small church. I was baptized in a church in Inglewood, California.
How did you get into a church? Like, what's that story?
Well, so anyways, once I stepped back, and once I got my head cleared, again, your head's part of the flesh.
Yeah, right.
Yep. I mean, there's that brain matter and and all that. But I started to listen to Charles Stanley. He's good. Yeah, Charles Stanley is good at delivering the message and all that. And I just started to. I was looking for a church, so then I found roommates. Okay, so basically, once I moved from Huntington Beach to the South Bay and lived, that extension of what I was going through, So I needed to find some roommates, and I needed to find another place and all that. So anyways, I found these roommates, and I wanted them to be Christian roommates because I knew, okay, I have to get around, some Christians, and I did. And I had, really cool Christian roommates who were struggling with things of their own.
Right.
It's not, so we all struggle with something, and
that's right.
So anyways, the one roommate, he was friends with a bunch of Christian Jewish people.
Messianic Jews.
And they were amazing. I mean, their knowledge of the Bible was very impressive to me. And I was drawn to that. And so we started to do things like, going on walks on the weekend, hikes, like, Malibu Canyon, things like that, up in that area. And it was just a great time of fellowship. And then we would have Bible study on the weekdays, once a week. And again, everybody had their struggles, and that's what really appealed to me was that, hey, everybody, you look at people and you think, their life must be wonderful. Well, those days of thinking that were long over because it's not. Everybody has something going on inside of them.
Yeah.
Whether that ends up manifesting externally or not, rest assured.
I think what you explained there, Kev, very clearly is the difference between being justified and then sanctified. So justified, your experience of coming to Christ was a supernatural experience, and yet it was your response to what God was doing in your heart and you giving your life and surrendering to him. Justified, you're now right with God. And then what I think you're describing is the sanctification process is an under construction. It's changing the old man into the new man.
Yeah. And being that you just said that, I think that day, that I accepted Christ, the reason why that day went the way it did and the experience that I had, he was giving me a glimpse of the peace that I can experience. Just to say, hey, check it out. This is what the world, is like, and this is, But seriously, it was profound. But you would think, okay, if it was so profound, well, then why did you continue? I don't know. I just know that it happened, but I always knew that I would come through it. But also, it was just the way life was revealed to me that day.
Yeah.
It was just amazing about how temporary all this really is.
Well, I think what you were explaining there earlier is just how it was a real clear revelation for you in your new journey with Christ that, man, everybody else is struggling like me. This is not an easy peasy thing.
Right.
This sanctification process. So once you go back to sharing, just as you were in that environment, there was that epiphany or that revelation for you. Man, I'm not in this alone. That's what I hear.
Yeah. And so what I got from those, relationships, with everybody, everybody having their own sort of struggle, is the importance of fellowship and how that support is important.
Yeah.
And how you need to be associated with a body, of believers. Oftentimes I think we get complacent with, we get up, we go to church, we do the, the steps of, singing and all that. But I don't think we really understand the importance of the fellowship, of how important that is. And the extension of what that really means, because ultimately, the church should be a vessel in order to allow the manifestation of the word out into the world.
Kevin, I don't know if I want to share kind of a little bit because I'm relating to you in a lot of ways. I became a Christian, and I would come to church with a hangover. Right?
Oh yeah.
I just came over. I'd come with a hangover, and I couldn't believe that these people would still love me and welcome me. I know they smelled the alcohol in my breath, right? Yeah. And I was trying to live this dual lifestyle of committed to Christ and then partying on Friday. And it just wasn't working. And I took a step away from Fridays for a little bit, but I got caught back in, right? And this was the last time I went out on a Friday. We were at a bar and a fight broke out, and I tried to hold a girl back that had a bottle in her hand. And she bit me in my arm. I had literally blood coming out of my arm because she bit me from trying to hold her back from hitting somebody, breaking a bottle over the head. And I just said, what am I doing? And I really felt at that moment, God said, this isn't where you belong.
Yeah.
And I just was like that. From that day on, I said, well, my Fridays can no longer be about my flesh, right?
Yeah.
And it was very shortly after that two young men at my church said, hey, there was only two other young men at my church. That's it. And they said, hey, we're gonna try to meet on Friday nights to just fellowship and read the Bible. Do you want to be part of that? And God he replaced my Friday nights. And that's really when I started blossoming. I was going to church for a while, but I wasn't changing dramatically until I committed to fellowship. Not just church, not just going to sing and listening to a nice message, but truly getting my life mingled
like
in
being
with engaged with other Christians. And from there, it was like my trajectory towards holiness was, skyrocketed.
Wow.
Yeah. And something else I want to add to that period is that I know that there was a hedge or whatever you want to call it, a thing of protection around me, because there were many times where, some bad things could have happened to me, but, they didn't. And I knew that there was protection around me without a doubt.
Yeah.
Which is such a testimony of his great grace.
Yes.
You mentioned that earlier, Kevin. That's just his grace that you really, not only that you experience the true reality of it,
right?
But you actually see it for real. And that sounds like your journey.
Experience it. Yeah. And so when I was with my roommates in that group of Christians, I ended up going to a church in Inglewood. Now, it was led by this guy from Arkansas, I believe it was Arkansas or Oklahoma, old school preacher. Him and his wife were wonderful people. I mean, just being around them, they were precious. And I remember there was really mostly just older people, really older people in the church, big auditorium, small congregation, right? And it was like that. And he'd get up there and he would preach. It was like cowboy preaching, right? He was just, but anyways, we would meet, I think it was on a Thursday, for a small Bible study in his office. And one thing I remember, and this really impressed, it was just an impression on me. Whenever they prayed, we were always on our knees.
Wow.
He said, we're going to pray, and we got on our knees. Always. Nobody was standing or nothing like that. And I guess that was just something that was a conviction of his, So I do remember that. And but that's where I ended up getting baptized, was at that church, and it's just, and there was like nobody there, there's a handful of, older African-American ladies who were precious themselves, right?
Yeah.
They were there, and,
wow.
and, the pastor and his family, and I only think my one roommate was there because that's the church he was going to. That's how I ended up there. But yeah, there was no, big crowd and band and all that stuff. So it was very humbling, but yet very, very impactful.
Wow.
So from there, I ended up meeting my wife because I was going back east for this, that, and the other, and ended up married. And so when we got married, we started to go to a church in Redondo Beach, and that's where we met Rob here, Rob and Kara. And, but another small, wonderful church, led by, a wonderful pastor. And that's where my wife got baptized, was there too. Again, it was just very impactful in our lives, and out of that, many friendships, and obviously Rob and Kara, but wow. And
Kev, it's really cool to hear your story in greater detail. I mean, to try and put your story, Jesus in your life story of 30 something years in maybe 30 minutes is a little difficult thing. But what would you say to those who are listening to this podcast? What would you say that as you're journey has taken all of the highs and lows and the ups and downs and all the things. You've maintained the truth of the gospel in your life. And so what would you say to those who are on that journey, whether they're still considering it, or those who have maybe been seasoned, or everybody else in between? What would you say in terms of giving wisdom to those who may be listening in their journey?
I would say that, they're again based off my life experience, is that you're going to have moments of, let's say, holiness. You're going to be like, I think you were mentioning, Jack, about, you were plugged in, you were engaged, and you're on your way to, I think life goes in seasons. There's a season, there's a season for war, season for, so anyways, a season for growth, a season for death. It goes in seasons. And when, I do know that shortly before I got married, I was much like what you were saying earlier, Jack. I was on that, road to holiness, and, very engaged, and I was very outward about my faith, but I felt like I was still young in my faith, even though it's been quite a few years up to that point. I felt there was so much more depth to the word, and to what it means to be a Christian, and to what it means for fellowship and all that. So I kind of said, okay, because I had people asking me a lot of questions that I really didn't have a lot of answers to, So although they would look at me and they knew, because people would tell me, there was a calmness about you in the storm.
Right.
So okay, I guess I had that going for me, but I didn't have a deeper understanding. So there was a season of, outwardness and all that. And then I don't want to say that I withdrew or anything like that, but I kind of got more contemplative about the word. And I wanted to know what exactly, I guess I started to approach the word when I would read it, I would visualize it in a cultural context of that time. And how do you move that forward to today? Because there's nothing new under the sun. I think we can all agree to that. Man has always lied, cheated, steal, and killed, and murdered, and adultery. That's been going on since, the beginning. No matter how much the technology around us changes, those remain. So I felt that a lot of people, would say to me, oh, why do you read the Bible? That was so long ago. That doesn't, it doesn't apply to today. And I would say that the Bible is about a heart thing. It's about a soul thing, right? It's not about an airplane or a car, right? Technology. No, it's about your soul. It's about your salvation.
Yes.
So I wanted to develop, or I wanted to get to know Scripture so that I can take it from then and move it forward and make it relatable. Because people would say, oh, well, I can't relate to that because that was so long ago. And that kind of bothered me. So that's where I've kind of been over the last, I'd say, 12, 15 years of my life is how can I move those experiences culturally back then and show people that, hey, it's the same thing today. It's, and the word, it's the beginning, middle, and end of it all.
That's right.
Right.
It's
so
timeless.
Timeless. So I would say that, and you're going to you're still going to sin in some capacity. Paul talks about the struggles of the flesh after he talked about grace and sin and the conflict with that. Should we sin so grace may, abound more? And there is that, people are like, well, it kind of washes out, and it almost goes back to the sin, penance thing and then good.
Right.
But what it is for me, so out of all this, what I've come to in my life is acceptance. There's two words, acceptance and forgiveness. And you can do that in any order, forgiveness, acceptance, whatever. But obviously accepting Christ. But beyond that, your everyday life, you have to accept the fact that there's going to be a struggle. Now, the struggles may not be as great or severe as they used to be because because you're growing and you're recognizing. So acceptance, accept that that's going to happen. Accept that you're going to struggle, with some things, and you always will in this life, because we are in the flesh in this life. And then you have to learn to forgive yourself, much like Christ forgave us. Not only do we have to forgive ourselves, but we have to forgive others. And in forgiving others, you experience the grace. It's kind of cool. It's almost a circular thing. So I would just say that, and sometimes, when Satan gets you in his crosshairs, he will use the guilt to beat you down to where you forget there's grace. Because he's got you beat down so much and you're beating yourself up that you forget, hey, I've already been forgiven.
That's right.
There's grace, right? This is just, no, I'm not saying not to take, sin's a serious issue.
Yes.
But there's a greater thing, there's a greater life than sin. Sin's a part of our life, but it's not your life,
That's
obviously.
Right. Wow.
And so, you're going to stumble, let's say. I don't mean to minimize it, because, sometimes, Christians backslide hard for whatever reason. And again, it's where the fellowship comes in. But if you realize and accept that that's going to happen, you don't go looking for it, but it's probably going to happen. Okay. But you have to forgive yourself, because Christ, he forgave us, he forgave others, but take that to, you have to forgive yourself, but you have to forgive others who have done you wrong in any capacity, because we know that, when you hold that poison of revenge and animosity, that affects you on many different levels. And you need to recognize that. So, forgive yourself and others like Christ, and accept life, for what it is. It's not going to be a cakewalk. Oh, there's going to be days when it's all good. There may be weeks, months, and years when it's all good. But don't fool yourself. Something's going to blindside you, and you just have to accept that and move on. Because I think what's been revealed to me is that if you don't accept it, then you stay in it. It's kind of like, accept the fact that, so let's just use, let's say, drinking or something. Okay. Accept the fact that, you were drinking this past weekend for whatever reason. Okay. And you got sloshed, and you probably said or did some things that are not very Christian-like or not reflective of the word. Okay, you did that, but realize there's grace and move on. Move on, because you cannot dwell in it. And, the more you dwell in it, you miss the opportunities of growing in grace.
That's good.
And it's just, so that's been my life experiences. And I can go on and on, but I just think it's just something else that when I look at people now, or when I interact with people, I look at what they can be. It's just revealed to me when I look at somebody, whether they're on top of the world or whether they're struggling, it's impressed upon me their potential and what they can be, through Christ. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So, Philippians. And it's so true. That's so important to me. And it's like you just want to say, look, it can be so much greater. It can be so much better. You can have that peace.
Yes.
But, there's going to be some struggles, but it's just not as bad.
That's good.
And so I don't know.
It's really good.
I hope that makes sense.
No, I think you hit some really important points there. I think, Satan wants to condemn us, and sometimes we want to condemn ourselves after we mess up as Christians, right? But repentance is not beating ourselves up. The price has been paid on the cross.
Exactly.
We're just choosing repentance, which is walking in the opposite direction. Right. I messed up. All right, I accept that. Now, what can I change about that in the future? I don't need to crucify myself, right?
Exactly.
Jesus died for me.
Exactly. Right. Right.
As we close, the foundation for our podcast is derived from Luke 8:39, where this demon-possessed man has been delivered by God, and he goes back to his family, and he tells everyone about what God has done for them, and he That's what God tells him to do, right? But he does more than that. He goes throughout the entire town proclaiming what God has done for him. And I really appreciate your candor, Kevin, of, like, you got saved, but you were still walking in the world, but God had grace for you. And he's changed you and shown you so much. And I love that. I think that's a spiritual gift, to see the potential in people.
I just wanted to emphasize something else real quick. The importance as a Christian, you have to read the Word, even if it's a minute a day, one sentence, one verse. It's just critical, because that's your communication. That's God revealing things for you to make it through this life and help you through this life in so many ways. There again, just remember that for me, if I'm not in a fellowship, if I'm not reading, I find that my attitude changes, and it's not for the better. I get a little bit short, because I'm a perfectionist, and that's a thing I'm struggling with, but I've gotten a lot better at it, and that can be very detrimental to relationships and everything like that. That's right. But it's so, if you're not staying strong in the Word or staying strong in fellowship, it's very easy for your life, I don't want to say to unravel, but old habits can kind of creep back in, but they don't take deep root. You recognize it right away, and you're able to work through that again. But it's just growth. Okay. It's not a deep rooting. It's just, okay, hey, so
absolutely. Yeah. That's a great putting a bow on it. And Kevin, thank you for sharing your story and for being on our show today. I'm a product of what God has done in your life, the sanctification process. And I can testify that God has changed you and is continuing to change you.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad that I get to be the benefit of that as well. So Thank you for being with us today.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
You. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody. See you next week. And now a reflection on today's interview. Today's episode reminds me of Hebrews 10:24-25 that says, "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." Fellowship is vital to the Christian life. For both me and Kevin, we recognized that there was a dramatic shift in our relationship with Christ when we committed ourselves to fellowship outside of a Sunday morning service. And so my encouragement to everyone today is to ensure they are safeguarding their time with other Christians in true fellowship. It is to your benefit and the benefit of others. There is no such thing as Lone Ranger Christianity. God created us for community, and He's provided the church for that. I encourage you to get into fellowship if you're not out of legalism, but to your benefit. It is truly for your benefit. God bless you. We will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Jesus in My Life. New episodes release every Tuesday. Subscribe on your preferred podcasting platform so you don't miss a single episode. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please consider sharing this podcast with a friend or family member. If you would like to help our visibility online, consider rating us and posting a review on Apple Podcast. Have an awesome Jesus in My Life story? Contact us at jesusinmylifepodcast@gmail.com.